They diagnosed me with borderline. I started seeing auras and colors around people. It looked like my reality was glitching. I just started having these paranoid thoughts. If there was a car behind me, I thought they wanted to kill me. Everything would be fine, and I would just get I should kill myself. Or maybe you should kill that person over there. I had no control over my body. I'm completely paralyzed, and my arms start moving by themselves. And I hear this voice, and it's basically saying, you're about to have a life-changing moment.
Hello and welcome back to the Almost False podcast, where I interview regular people with incredible stories. Today we'll be diving into the life of a young woman named Alexandra, who has had a plethora of mental illnesses, including depression, anxiety, bipolar, and schizophrenia. She shared her life story and provided insight as to what it's like to be suffering from these mysterious conditions. She also shared how she was completely cured from all of them, and spoiler, it's definitely not a cure that your doctor believes in.
Yeah, so I actually started noticing that I was depressed in middle school. Um I started self-harming back then, but my parents didn't really know about it. I kept it very hidden. And that carried on until high school. And then so when my parents started, well, by my parents I mean my mom actually. When my mom started noticing that I was sleeping a lot, that I was just upset all the time, that I was having these like rage outbursts. I mean, when I would rage, I would literally take my bed and move it across the room. It was like I just started moving stuff and like throwing stuff on the floor, punching walls. So when she kind of saw that that was worsening, she took me to a therapist, and they diagnosed me with anxiety and depression. I was later diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, BPD. But at that time, I was still very, how do I say? I was mistrusting of people, so I wasn't talking with with the therapist as I should have been. Like I wasn't telling her what was going on. I was just kind of lying a lot of the time, or just being like, "I'm okay." So I think those diagnoses could have gone further, but at that time, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. Um, they tried to help me, but I told my mom that I wasn't doing anything. So eventually, I was just taken out of it because nothing was changing. And sometimes I would act like everything was fine, so she would think that I was getting better, but in reality I was still doing the same stuff. I just didn't want to go to therapy.
Right. And you were sent to a mental hospital, but like you said, you kind of lied to get out of it. And you were scared of getting pills. And so instead of doing that, you went to different kinds of relief. Can you explain what your thought process was and what are the things that you got into at that point?
So my mom tried to, well, she didn't Baker Act me, which I'll explain what that means for the people that don't know. She didn't exactly Baker Act me while I was getting therapy. They were scared that I was going to commit suicide, so they held me at a mental facility. That's what Baker acting mean. It's just they hold you because they're scared you're gonna hurt yourself. They watch you, and so they wanted to do that. I didn't know how long I was gonna be in there, so I told them I was like, hey, like I just wanted to get attention from my parents. I am not really gonna commit suicide. I'm gonna stop hurting myself. I'll stop, da da da, because they were also talking about putting me on antidepressants. And at that time, I had taken a few drug courses, and I was big into drugs and knowing about them for some reason. So I knew what certain pills did. I knew what certain drugs did. I knew that they weren't good for for your liver. I knew that they could have side effects. So I didn't want to get into any of that. I feel like internally, I felt like there was a different way I could be helped. I just didn't know how. And so my thought process during all of that was just like, okay, I don't I don't want to keep doing this anymore. I don't want to keep talking to these people that know nothing about me. I don't want to stay in this place by myself. I'm already isolated enough as it is at my house. Let me just lie, get out of here, and I'll deal with it on my own. I had grown up so emotionally independent up until that point because I didn't have the support from my parents that I needed. So then going back to the question, because I didn't really touch base on that, before I got introduced to weed, since I was already sleeping a lot, and I was dreaming so vividly, I started hearing about lucid dreaming, where you could control your dreams. And that interested me because it's like, okay, great. I could go to sleep. I can not think about my life for a few hours and then I can experience a completely new reality. So I started sleeping a lot more. I mean, I would come home from school and then just sleep. And then I would be up in the middle of the night, but most of the evenings that I was here, I was sleeping. And so the boyfriend that I had back then, he kind of told me about how meditation was good for you. I had heard about it, but I didn't really think anything of it. But then he kind of got me a little bit into it. He said it could help clear your mind and help control your emotions. And I was like, great, I need that. So I started meditating for an hour each day after school. And the way I would meditate, I would do it laying down. So people usually meditate sitting up, but since I would do it laying down, it was easier for me when I would start lucid dreaming because I could be laying down and I was already used to not moving. So I could lay down, not move, and then put myself into a dream. I became so good at controlling my dreams that I could literally just jump into one if I did it the right way. So that's kind of what I started doing to escape my life. Basically, it's just sleeping and dreaming. Um, and so when I got into weed, into marijuana, it like made me see the world in a completely different way. It completely changed my brain chemistry for one. But it just made me feel so much more calmer, happier. It allowed me to be in the present at first and just laugh. It just made me giggly about everything. So because of how it affected me, um, I started to kind of understand things in a different way. So I started seeing how, meditation could help me more. And then I started hanging around with more people who smoked and they were into crystals already. So I started getting into crystals. And, since I was already meditating and doing the crystals, I started getting into chanting and tarot and oracle cards. So that's kind of how it started. The last year of high school, me and my then boyfriend completely broke up. So then I no longer had this one person to focus everything into. I now had weed that could make me forget about any of that and not care about it. So the biggest thing is that marijuana made me not care about consequences, about what was going on, like nothing. It just allowed me to just enjoy what was going on in the moment, which, proved to be dangerous. Nothing too bad ended up happening, but I did get into like some reckless stuff. But I started hanging out with more people that smoked. And since they were already into spirituality, I got more into spirituality. And then when I went to college, I was completely on my own, which was great. So then I could smoke however much I wanted, whenever I wanted. And before that, I didn't have a car. So I would be sneaking out at night just to go smoke weed with my friends. Um, I did it until my parents put cameras in the house, but this was like a nightly thing.
Uh, okay, we're starting to get into the new age phase of your life. And you mentioned that, weed and kind of the things that you used to do before was easy introduction and easy transition for you to get into the new age. For the first year that you were doing that, you were kind of experimenting with a bunch of things, kind of doing everything that was being thrown at you. But you got a lot deeper into it. I think it was about a year after the beginning of what we were talking about when you started working at a crystal shop. Can you explain how that period of your life was?
Sure. So I started working at a crystal shop. And so now I'm not only doing it, like working with the cards and the crystals at certain points, now I'm actively selling it and being around it constantly. And I was playing the meditation music And I mean, this was completely like so coincidental how it happened, almost too coincidental. But I literally walked into the store because it was brand new. And as soon as the owner saw me, she's like, started talking to me and basically was like, "You're hired." I was like, "Great, okay." Like it just happened so seamlessly and flawlessly that looking back on it now, I'm like, that was definitely satanic. Like, no. Um, it's like the opposite of divine intervention. But basically, so now I'm at this crystal store. I'm completely surrounded by crystals. Great. I'm completely surrounded by dream catchers. So I start getting deeper into the stuff. I start doing more research on crystals because now I have to sell them. Um, I start doing more research on different types of tarot cards and what they mean because now people are coming up to me asking me, like, "Hey, can you read my cards? Hey, can you tell me this?" I start opening up my third eye. I start seeing auras and colors around people. I start talking to people, and now I'm getting information from whatever about these people's lives that I couldn't have possibly known. So it's like all these supernatural things start happening when I get into that crystal store. And another thing to mention too is that this crystal store also had a lot of idols. It had a lot of idolatry, so it had like little statues of, Hindu gods and goddesses and Cuban saints and stuff like that. So just completely surrounded by all this idolatry and just all this new age stuff. Um, so start learning more about it. That leads me more into like I start doing yoga, start doing, trying to activate my Kundalini energy or like have a Kundalini awakening, which I do end up having around that time. Um, and it basically just felt like I was looking back on it now, I felt like something entered my body that day. I felt like I got possessed by something.
Well, do you mind touching about it quickly?
Yeah, sure. So it was a specific day. I don't remember what year it was, but I know it was after working a little bit at the crystal store. Um, so I was just stretching, doing yoga poses, and controlling my breathing in a certain way because yoga is all about, directing your energy and aligning your chakras a certain way and doing certain poses, breathing a certain way. Just having full control of your bodily functions, which you're not supposed, well, whatever. But
Yeah, I want to say something about this before you continue because people think that yoga is just stretching. It actually isn't. Yoga is from Hinduism, and it's a very spiritual practice. So if you think that yoga is just stretching, do more research. But yes, continue.
it's not. It's not. So yoga, you're basically doing poses to worship Hindu gods. I mean, yoga stretching is not natural. You're not going to accidentally put yourself in a yoga pose when you're stretching. That's the way that I look at it. It's like if you're stretching, you're not accidentally doing like Warrior 3. It's just weird. Um but anyway, so I was just doing yoga and I was listening to music and I remember I was alone at my house, but I was breathing a certain way and then I stretched backwards. Like I just bend my spine, like I'm standing up straight and I bend my spine as far back as I could. And it looked so unnatural. But as I'm like bending my spine backwards and I'm breathing this certain way, I feel this like block of, I can only describe it as like energy. This vibrating thing go from all the way from my feet up throughout my body. And what really caught me off guard was the fact that it would stay in certain places and just kind of do this and then move. And then do this and then move. And when it would do that, it was like, this is gonna sound so strange for people who haven't experienced the supernatural, but it looked like my reality was glitching. I heard the music and it would be completely fine one moment and then it would distort when this thing like just stopped moving. And it would do that every single time and my vision would blur. It was just, I've never experienced anything like that since. I had never experienced anything like that up until that moment. But after that is when everything just started like opening. That's After that is when I started astral projecting. I started really being able to control my lucid dreams a lot more. I mean, just supernatural on a whole different level. And now that I say supernatural, because this is going to tie in later, um, back when I was in middle school, I actually started drawing symbols on my doors and stuff. And I didn't know it at the time. But after that stuff happened with the Kundalini, where I drew the symbols, some stuff would start to manifest at night when I was astral projecting. Or when I was half awake, half asleep, I would see it. It was just strange.
What kind of symbols are we talking about here? Is this specific things or just random shapes?
So around that time, around like high school, middle school, in that like time period, I got big into the show Supernatural. And they would do a lot of like sigils and stuff like that. So that made me kind of get into like like that sigils, symbols for protection. But it would be like pentagrams with certain symbols on them. There was one that looked like it kind of looked like a pentagram, but it had like 10 points, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, just strange, and then just symbols all over it. I didn't know what it meant. I was just drawing stuff just to draw it, and because it's for protection, blah, 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 you know?
And it's at that time that you start being interested in spirit guides. It's a very common thing for people that are in the new age. You started being interested in your spirit guides, which you believed were guiding you, and you really wanted to meet them. And you did have an encounter. You have a story about that. Can you tell that story?
Yeah. Ew. Um, so I kept hearing all about these like spirit guides and spirit animals and the spirits of nature, da, 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 which are really just demonic spirits. Just clarifying that they're all demonic spirits. Um, so I kept hearing about this, and I actually went to another crystal shop and I bought two Wiccan spells because at this time too I'm getting into like studying Wicca and specific forms of witchcraft because now I'm doing the spells, I'm doing the chants, I'm doing the affirmations, I'm like working with stuff. I'm like laying out a sheet in the middle of my room, sitting on it, with the Om symbol, and I'm like putting candles and just doing stuff like that. So strange now when I think about it, but I was doing all that stuff. So I started hearing about spirit guides. And at this point, I'm seeing how much power I'm getting. And to me, that was a form of safety. It was a form of me being able to have control over over my life in a way because up until this point I didn't have control. Like there was all these things that kept happening to me and I just felt like I was so out of control. I felt like I just didn't feel safe. So spirituality and new age spirituality for me was that form of safety. Um, so I buy these two Wiccan spells. One of them is for lucid dreaming, if I'm not mistaken. And the other one is for meeting your spirit guides, and you're supposed to sleep with them under your pillow, and it's just a bunch of herbs, and people have like placed spells on it, and you're supposed to read the spell a certain amount of times. So I did that. Luckily enough, I actually ended up losing. Sorry, I didn't mean to do this. That's a habit. I actually ended up losing one of them. So I'm glad that happened. But the one with the spirit guides, I still had. So I did that one, and nothing happened at first. But I did start. I don't know how else to describe this, but I did start getting pulled out of my body while I was sleeping. So I wasn't trying to astral project, it would just happen. And I would always end up in my room in the morning somehow. And it kept repeating for a certain amount of time. It just kept repeating. And during one of those times where I noticed it was morning, I was in my room and I was sleeping still, but I'm here and I'm sleeping in my bed. Um, Something pulls me back into my body, like my soul, my spirit starts levitating back into my body. And then I'm in my body, but I'm paralyzed. I can't open my eyes. I just feel my body vibrating in a way. And so my arm, I'm completely paralyzed. Like I tried to move, I couldn't. And my arms start moving by themselves. And I hear this voice. It's like I almost feel like there's something right on top of me, and there's this like pulsing light I'm seeing behind my eyes, behind like my closed eyes, and I hear this voice, and it's audibly talking to me, and it's basically saying, "You're about to experience a very important moment of your life. You're about to have a life changing moment." Is exactly what it said. Um, and it was saying like, just trust me. You're about to have a life changing moment. Da, da, da. And my arms are still moving. I'm like getting put into this weird position where my legs are crossed and my arms are now like crossed on on my chest. Just weird stuff.
And you didn't put your legs and your arms in that position, right?
No, no, I had no control over my body. Like I had tried moving previous and I was completely in sleep paralysis, but I was awake. I just couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move. Everything was just moving by itself. Like something was moving my arms, something was moving my legs. And so this was divine intervention because my mom never walks into my room in the morning. But as soon as I like felt like something was about to happen, almost like something was getting pulled out of me. I don't know how to explain that, but my mom walks into my room and everything stops and I like almost fall back into my body and I'm in pain. I'm in so much pain. Like my shoulders hurting, my knee is hurting specifically, like my back is hurting, like I'm just in pain. And I wake up and I don't even remember why my mom was in my room. She just came in and was like, "Hey, you want breakfast?" Which she never did. She would never like she never did that. It was just so out of the ordinary. Um like everything just stopped as soon as she came in the room. So that was one experience that I had. After that, nothing for a while, nothing really tried to do stuff like that. I would just get pulled out of my body in the middle of the night, or I would wake up every single night at 3 a.m. That was super common for me. I mean, I still do up to this day. I just pray about it now. I'm like, God, I know you
Okay.
want me to do some spiritual warfaring right now. I'm just going to pray. But, ever since I started lucid dreaming up until now, I wake up every single night around 3 a.m.
Hey, it's me, and I'm sorry for interrupting this amazing story, but I just wanted to remind you that we have extra content on Locals that you should check out, like the beginning of this conversation or the after show, which talks about the takeaways and practical applications of the testimonies. Go to almostfalse.locals.com or download the Locals app to get free access, unless you want to be missing out. Anyway, the links are in the description. Now, let's get back to the story. That's actually pretty significant. So if people are not aware, 3 a.m. is like the witching hour. This is the common hour for spells and whatever. So 3 a.m. is a very specific time. And after that encounter that you had, this specific sleep paralysis experience, I don't know how long it was, but you started experiencing symptoms of schizophrenia. You started hearing voices and being paranoid of a lot of things. Can you give me an example of what you would hear and how you would feel when that happened?
Yeah, so after this, instead of now having these outward experiences, I was still astral projecting and I was still having lucid dreams and I was still waking up at 3 a.m. But now instead of these things showing themselves to me, now I was hearing stuff in my head. And it became as a typical like, oh, like depressing thoughts, whatever. I would just I would be fine. Everything would be fine. And I would just get I should kill myself thought out of nowhere. And then it was like a like a broken record. I would just start getting memories from my past of like why I wasn't enough, why like I just started deteriorating on the inside. But then on the outside, I was doing all this spirituality, all this practice. I was like, okay, maybe I'm just doing shadow work, which for those of you who don't know what shadow work is, it's when you go back and you experience or relive your past trauma so that you can heal your body and heal yourself through it and just basically integrate it and accept it and internalize it. Um, But I just started hearing all these like, oh, you're not good enough. You should kill yourself. Or maybe you should kill that person over there. Oh, what would it be like if you killed that person? How would you get away with it? Or, what would you do? It was just very dark thoughts. And I just chalked it off as intrusive thoughts. I was like, okay, I'm just having intrusive thoughts. And they were very much intrusive, but not from me. And so I would say it really escalated when I turned 21. Um, had a big birthday party. Barely really like I didn't just invited a bunch of people. I was just like whatever. But before that I was having so it would it would fluctuate a lot. And it could almost be considered like bipolar. There were days when I would have a god complex. I would be like, I'm on top of the world, I'm the creator of my own reality, I'm the best, da da da. And then it would just completely switch the next day and I would just want to kill myself, I suck, da da da, I'm ugly. And then it would go back to, oh, I'm so attractive, like this like weird self-praising type of thing.
Well, that's bipolar disorder. If like that's pretty much exactly what bipolar disorder is. So
Yeah, so I was experiencing a lot of that, and then when I have my birthday party that, like, nothing goes as planned, it really threw me in for a loop. I don't know why, because it's just a birthday party, but it really threw me in for a loop, and after that, I don't know what happened, I just became dark, and I mean, like, I started isolating myself from people, and up until now, I kind of still had a social life. I was going out, I kinda started not kind of, I started clubbing and like I would go out and talk with people. I would go out to different places and meet different people. I got into a fire dancing group. So just, I was doing activities and whatever. But then after this, I was like, nobody likes me. Everyone's out to get me. People are laughing about me. People are talking about me behind my back. I mean, just delusional to the point where I couldn't go out to a social event and not think that people weren't talking about me. And every time I heard a person laugh, this person could be a stranger. I would think it was about me. I mean, I just started having these paranoid thoughts. I thought that, if there was a car behind me, I thought that they were following me, that they wanted to kill me. I thought that people were stalking me. I thought that people were like actually wanting to kill me. I thought uh, that one day somebody was going to kidnap me and I was just going to get killed basically. And so that really caused me to just go inward a lot, like cuz I didn't really explain it, but I started being very social, but this just caused me to just go inward. I stopped hanging out with friends. I started being very paranoid and suspicious of other friends, and it was just it was just bad. So that's when I started hearing stuff a lot more. I mean, it was like every time I was around people, I would be so quiet. It was almost like I had a muzzle on me because my thoughts would be so loud that like sometimes I wouldn't hear what people were saying to me, type of thing. And I just thought, I was just like, okay, maybe it's just the weed. Maybe the weed is finally getting to me because up until this point, it got to a point where I was smoking every single day, two, maybe three times, four times a day. So I was a heavy smoker. And I just thought I was like, okay, like my dopamine's low, this is just the effects of it and whatever. And I just didn't think much of it. But one thing that I did start seeing was that after that 21st birthday, I did start having very dark dreams as well. I started seeing demons in my dreams, but it wasn't like nightmares. I wasn't scared. I didn't have that feeling of fear. It was just that I felt like I was astral projecting on lower dimensions, if that makes sense. But I wasn't seeing demons for what they were. They didn't look like these hideous creatures. They looked like people, or they looked like people that I knew, but they just a lot of the times looked like zombies, or like they just weren't fully normal when they would function. Like they didn't physically look like zombies, but the way they walked or the way they would behave, it was just very strange. It was very, very strange dreams.
Interesting. And I know it's also at that same time that you started having dreams about the devil. I know one particular dream that you told me the other day. Can you kind of mention if you have other dreams like that? Because at that point you didn't believe in like the devil and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's interesting that you had dreams like that. Can you explain at least one or more if you have more?
So I still had this conception in my head of good and evil. I believed that there were bad spirits out there, but I also believed that there were good spirits. So I almost did believe in like the demons and angels thing, but not necessarily the way the Bible describes it. For me, it was just kind of like a yin and yang thing. So I almost didn't even see these bad spirits as evil. I just saw them as dark. And I was like, there's dark and there's light, whatever. Um, so I think that's also why, to a certain extent, in my dreams, I wasn't scared. I was just like, okay, whatever. I'm just seeing the dark side more. And it got to a point where I did want to almost get a demonology book. I wanted to learn more about it because there was part of me that was fascinated with it. So then it started getting worse in that sense, where I would wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't tell if I was awake or asleep. I would be in like that middle state and I would kind of like see stuff. I would see, like a figure in the corner, or I would start seeing shadows moving weird ways. Um, so it was just very confusing for a while because I couldn't tell you if I was awake or if I was asleep. It was just very confusing nights for me. And so leading up to when I got my freedom, that's when everything got a whole lot worse. I started having dreams with the devil. So I had this one particular dream where, and this was actually the day of my deliverance. Like this was right before my deliverance, but I was in this giant mansion, and I never saw us outside the mansion, but I was in the mansion and there was banquets going on, but everyone had masks on. And me and a couple of other girls, we had our masks, but we were servants of some kind. We had like robes, and we were looking around. We were making sure the party was fine, that everybody was fine. And at one point in the dream, we were looking for Lucifer. I remember being like, "Hey, we have to find Lucifer." And at one point, we did find him, and I mean, it was this like cloaked figure. I never saw his face. I just remember seeing his legs and his ankles. It was like his legs stopped at his ankles, and then there was a space, and then his feet. But his feet they were like hooves almost. They weren't normal human feet. It was just strange. And then at the end of that dream, we were basically his brides. Like we had veils on us, and we were like throwing. We each had like I don't know what significance this has, but we each had like a color of sparkles or confetti, and we were like throwing it, and we were like right next to him or whatever. And so when I got my deliverance, the lady actually ended up telling me like, "Hey, you're basically Satan's bride right now," and I hadn't told her anything about the dream.
So before we get too far into that story, because I definitely want to ask you about this. You mentioned it kind of before we get to the topic, but that's okay. Since you were 11, the time that things got a lot darker. So from 11 to 20 something, how old were you in the last thing that you talked about, the dream, whatever? How old were you?
So that particular dream, I was 23.
Okay, so from 11 to 23, you had both mental illness, signs of mental illness, and weird spiritual things that were happening to you. And all of that stopped after this, a little bit after, but this deliverance night that you talked about. So you got invited to a restaurant, and then what happened after that?
uh, that day it completely changed my life. So I got invited I got invited to this restaurant, and there was so much resistance from me in my spirit, and I couldn't tell you why. I just didn't want to go. Like, I kept making up excuses. I told my brother because he was the one that invited me. I was like, I'm not gonna go. And then it was, oh, well, maybe I'll take my car so I can leave. And we ended up taking his car together, so I couldn't leave. And when I was there, I was like, maybe I'll call my boyfriend so he can come pick me up. And just like little things that there was something in me that was so irked about it. And it was definitely like you know, the evil in me that didn't want any of that to happen. So my brother invited me to this restaurant and we were seeing some family friends. I personally hadn't seen them in maybe like 6 years. They were the first people that we met when we came to Naples. So we're there and I'm not talking to anybody. I mean, like mean face, like just arms crossed, don't want to talk to anybody. I go up to the host stand and start talking with them instead of talking with the people that I'm with. Like it, like just little things like that. And we finally get sat, and I'm like all the way at the end of the table. Don't want to sit next to anybody either. Like basically just if I need a dash, I dash. And I'm gonna I'm gonna just give her a fake name because whatever. But I'm gonna call her Patricia. Patricia, she's the mom and of like the family, and she comes up and she actually sits right next to me, and I'm like, great, this is like the last person I want to talk to right now, because all I remembered from her was that she loves Jesus and she's super religious and whatever, da da da, and all she talks about is Jesus. And I'm laughing at it now because all I want to talk about now is Jesus. But everything's pretty fine. I'm just trying to not make myself known. And this entire time, I'm not talking to anybody, but I feel like I'm about to have a panic attack. And that's something that I forgot to mention. But ever since I was like 13, up until that age, I was having constant panic attacks because of all the stress that I was putting myself under, all the emotional stress. So I feel like I'm about to have a panic attack. I start sweating, I start shaking, I'm like crying and I can't tell you why. Nothing's wrong, nothing's going on. I'm just in distress. And I leave the table maybe 3 or 4 times to go to the bathroom just to just to feel like I can breathe. So crazy. And one time, like the last time I go back and sit at the table, I finally feel like I'm fine for the most part. And so Patricia next to me, she starts getting a vertigo attack. Like, I mean, like her head starts spinning, like she can't see type of thing. And this goes on for maybe 10 minutes at most. So I look at her and my eyes are kind of already open to the spirit in a way. And I see this like red orb just right behind her head, right here. And looking back on it afterwards, I felt like something almost tried to transfer itself from me to her. Because as soon as I started feeling better, she started getting this vertigo attack. And it was completely a spiritual attack. And I get the urge to lay my hands on her and pray. I don't want to do it because I was like, what? Why am I going to pray for like, what? It was just weird in my head. I'm like, why do I suddenly feel the urge to like put my hands on her and pray? So I'm like not moving. I feel so awkward. And so I'm finally like, okay, you know what? I'll just do it. I'll just do it. Whatever. And I did it. And after I laid my hands on her and I prayed, and I actually prayed to God. I prayed to Jesus. Um, it like a little bit after, maybe a minute after, she just smiles and it stops. It like dwindles down. I'm like, okay, what just happened? Like, let me take my hands off.
Right, because it was weird for you because you never prayed. The reason why you prayed to Jesus is because your parents were kind of like a little bit Christian, your grandparents were Christian, but that
Yeah,
was not part of your life at that point. It's not like you were praying and this was just another time. This was like an isolated time where you prayed.
no.
So that's why it was so weird.
Yeah, and especially me like putting my hands on her, it just didn't feel comfortable to me. It didn't feel normal for me at that time. Um, and she smiles and she looks at my brother at that time is with his girlfriend, and they had never met. The girlfriend and Patricia, they had never met ever in their lives. She just looks at her and she's like, "You have a son, right?" And the girlfriend's like, "Yeah." Well, what? How do you know that? And she's like, she gives her a prophetic message about her son. Okay, great. And then she turns to me and she's like, "But the biggest message I have is for you." And and she says, "You know that Jesus loves you, right?" And sorry, I just start crying. It's like like literally somebody turned on a faucet and I just start crying. And it's like at that time, like people had told me before, Jesus loves you, right? And like at that time I was into the spirituality, so it shouldn't have made me react in the way that I did. But I'm just crying and I can't stop crying. It's like I'm crying the tears of all the years that I've held all these tears in. And I'm crying and she just hugs me. And it's like it's like the most heartwarming hug I've ever gotten in my life. Cause she just starts telling me like he's just waiting for you. He's been waiting for you for so long. Like he has his arms open for you. Like he just wants to hug you. And I'm bawling. Like bawling. And then she starts telling me stuff that's so specific to my life that she couldn't have possibly known. That like not even my brother knew, or that I know he didn't tell her these things. Like she just starts saying like she starts saying stuff by name, like, "Hey, like you haven't you haven't forgotten that guy in high school. Like you need to let him go." And you haven't let this go, and you haven't forgotten yourself for this, and all the depression and all the anxiety that's on you, like Jesus just wants to take it away. And I'm just like just waterfalls. And she was just completely speaking like it was just like Jesus was speaking through her. Jesus was completely using her in that moment to minister to me and just talk to me. And it was such a divine encounter that everybody's else's food came out except mine. Like everybody got their appetizers, mine didn't come out until way after her and I were done talking. Like like I was just sitting there with nothing in front of me, and the server didn't even notice. Like it wasn't like the server did it on purpose because they saw me crying. It just didn't happen. Um and she just, I mean, for like the 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours that we're there, I'm crying the entire time because of everything she's telling me. Like just super specific, ministering to me, ministering, like basically telling me my whole life. I was like, okay, this is definitely Jesus. Like this was it completely changed my life. Because up until that point, I had tried so many things and nothing had worked. And then for something to make me feel so strongly with one sentence, I was like, in my heart, I knew that it was Jesus. And so that night happens. I mean, that was the best tasting meal of my life. I don't know what it was, but I that was the best night of my life. And so she tells me, she's like, "I have more to say to you, but I can't tell you all of it now. Do you mind if we get together and do some deliverance?" And at that point, I didn't know what deliverance was. I was just like, I need to talk to you more. Like something in me just wanted so much more of whatever she had. Like I'm just like, yes, whenever, yes. And so it was about it was a few days after that night, up to a week, that we didn't see each other again. Luckily my parents were out of town. So we just ended up doing it at my house and there was nobody there. But from from the time that we saw each other at the restaurant until the time that we met again, it was like all the darkness just started full on attacking me, like full blown. Like it was insane. So that was when I had the dream about Lucifer, that the morning before her and I saw each other. I had that dream that same morning. My boyfriend, he started sleep talking in the middle of the night and started like he would hit me sometimes in the head. Like I just like some weird stuff started happening. I would wake up, it'd be 3 a.m. and as soon as I woke up, he would start laughing. And I'm like, I was like, I rebuke you. Like, I would just start praying because it was so strange for me to see and he would just start saying random stuff I don't even remember what he would say, but just weird stuff, and he had never slept talk before. It was just that moment, like, that week period, he would, like, hit me in my head, and I'd wake up and be like, "What?" And then he would just laugh, and I'd wake him up, and I'm like, "Hey, like, are you okay?" He's like, "What?" Like, "What's going on?" Like, just some weird stuff, and that's when I really started to see stuff in that corner, which I didn't tie to the symbols until afterwards. And after I got my deliverance, I prayed over that door and over those symbols and it stopped. But I would see like a figure, like a whole black figure in that corner. And it would just be there. And I would be so scared I started being so scared to see it and to sleep that I started sleeping on the other side of the bed of where I would normally sleep. So it would be out of sight. Um, so just like little things like that happen. I started my dreams were full blown demonic, but it didn't really come to light until after I got my deliverance. So up until now, in the dreams, the demons would be like they would be cloaked almost. I would never see them in their true form. And afterwards, after I got my deliverance, I mean, I think not. I think I believe Jesus allowed me to see them for what they were, so that I knew what I was serving at that time, and so I would just never go back to it. But basically, her and we meet up at my house. She comes over. She says, she did her prayer. She covered the whole house. And I remember her telling me just like, hey, just get a bag, get some tissues, and get water. And all I could think about in my head was, wow, this sounds like an exorcism is about to happen. Like, just jokes. And I mean, we prayed and she said, I didn't prepare anything for today. I'm just gonna let Jesus guide it. Like, while she was doing deliverance on me at one point and I started manifesting, I was like hunched over because I couldn't move my body. And I start taking my jacket off and she sees the tattoos. And it was like exactly like how she describes and everything was just so like glory to God. He showed her so many things about me. Like she told me that I had symptoms of schizophrenia. She like prayed over that. She's like, "Yeah, are you hearing voices in your head? Are you doing this?" I'm like, "Yeah, all of that, everything that you said." And so we were in deliverance for about 4 hours, maybe around that time, and it's just because like she had to go to church afterwards. Otherwise, but I mean, but it was a lot because that's when I realized the stuff that I was serving. I was so ignorant up to that point. Because when I started manifesting, I started saying names that I didn't even know, but when we looked them up, they were demonic names. Um, I started like laughing at her, and it wasn't me. It was like stuff was manifesting through me. I wanted to like hurt her while we were doing deliverance. I mean, like just evil stuff kept coming out, and I was coughing, I was gagging, I was like bile was just coming up. I was like, my body just felt like I just felt it all come out. So after that experience, I was just completely shocked. Because in my head, I really thought that what I was doing was light work, that it was good, and I just saw how demonic everything was, and I mean, just it was just crazy, crazy to think about that. That's all the stuff that I had been serving. Um, but yeah.
I find it beautiful, first of all. You seem to be doing a lot better than you used to, praise God. But what I want to go back to is from the beginning of your story, there's a pattern of mental illness, of addiction, and of dark spiritual encounters. What happened after you were delivered? Talking about the addictions, because you were addicted to, at that point, you were addicted to weed. I don't know if you were addicted to any of the new age practices you were doing, but definitely weed. You talked about masturbation and sex. You also you were diagnosed with anxiety, depression, borderline personality disorder, and you had also very, very big symptoms of bipolar and schizophrenia, which if you had gone to a therapist, you probably would have been diagnosed with these two as well. So 5 different mental illnesses with the addictions and with this negative spiritual encounters. How did that change after that night?
So, and then just to add on to that, because I don't think I mentioned this, I had developed an eating disorder, which it's orthorexia. For those of you that know, or those of you that don't know, it's when you pay so much attention to ingredients and what everything has that you restrict yourself so much. And there came a point where in my life I was eating only fruits and vegetables. That's it, type of thing. It got very bad. After this, I mean, glory to God. Um, I haven't smoked weed, and I had tried to get rid of it for 4 years, and I couldn't by myself. I have no desire of it whatsoever. I mean, everything's gone. The darkness is gone. I feel like I can love people again and love myself again, and I have such a profound respect and love for my family and for other people, and I just before that I had so much hate and anger, and it's beautiful. Everything just completely got taken away and replaced with his love, with Jesus' love, and with his light. And I did experience some dreams afterwards. Like it was like it was getting cleansed out almost. But I think Jesus allowed that to happen. So again, I could actually see what I was serving and never want to go back to it, because then my dreams weren't cloaked figures anymore. It was these like nasty, disgusting beings that were out to kill me in the dreams, and they were like half animal, half human, half this. I mean, just crazy stuff. Um and I started praying at night, and after about a month or two, like those dreams got completely taken away and replaced with beautiful dreams. I actually had a dream where I believe I was caught up to heaven, and I saw a part of it. Because in the dream I was in this like white waiting room. Everything was white. There was tables and chairs, and there were a bunch of people there. In this room, if you kept going to either side, it kept expanding, and there were clouds that would appear. But I was just sitting there with people, and we were all waiting to get graded, but we couldn't get graded until everybody that was meant to walk through the door walked in and got judged. I remember like looking out a window, and I just saw a line of people, and they were trying to walk into through the door to get judged. And once everybody came in, there was this beautiful there was this beautiful presence that came about the room. It was like the most loving, fatherly presence that I've ever experienced in my life. I mean, it was just pure love and joy. and happiness, and everybody rejoiced. You know, when they got their grading or whatever, everyone just rejoiced. Everyone was like little kids. And everything disappeared, and then I was in this, it was almost like a void, but it didn't feel dark. Like everything around was dark, but it didn't feel like empty darkness. And there was a door, and it opened just a crack, and I saw the most beautiful gold light pour out of it, almost like you could touch it. It was like almost tangible light. And I saw the most, I mean, beautiful palace and city in the distance, and it was like it was made out of, I mean, diamonds wouldn't even do it justice. Like it was, everything was just gorgeous. The sky was just like this pure, clear, goldish blue, and there were streets, and there was a gate, and I only saw it for like a second, but I woke up from that dream into another dream, and I remember asking the girl that was next to me, I'm like, "Did you see that?" She was like, "Yeah, but nobody else saw it because they're not ready for it yet." And I remember waking up and I was just crying because it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, words don't do it justice at all. I just remember crying that morning and giving thanks to God and glory to Him. And I opened my Bible, and I don't remember what verse it was, but it was like exactly what I was thinking. Like I opened my Bible now, and it's like Jesus is talking directly through me, or to me, not through me. But like I'll ask a question, and I'll just randomly open my Bible, and it's like exactly what I need.
That's so beautiful. I'm very, very happy for you. And I'm very thankful that you be willing to share this much and be vulnerable. I think it's a beautiful story, and I think a lot of people will actually be helped by it. And to end off the interview, I want to ask you if you had the chance to talk to somebody that has a life similar to the life that you used to have, with all the mental illness and all the things that you used to experience, what would you say to them?
I would say none of that stuff is gonna give you peace. It's all so temporary. I mean, you have to keep coming back to it to even get a sense of of joy, and then it goes away. Like you smoke the weed and you feel great, but then you feel worse afterwards. Or you drink the alcohol and you feel great for the moment, but then you feel worse afterwards, and it keeps calling you back to do it more and more, or to keep going into like harder stuff. And nothing's going to give you the peace that you're looking for except Jesus Christ. And just following him and accepting him, just you believing in him and accepting him, he will, just call on him and he'll change your life. I promise. Just call on him with a willing heart and with an open heart, and he will change your life. He will present himself to you. I know sometimes people say, well, like I've prayed to Jesus before, nothing's changed, or I've been, looking for him or calling out to him for so long. But there's there's times where you have to go through certain things so that you hit rock bottom so hard that once you get out of that, you never want to go back to it. Because I know I've had so many chances to accept Jesus, and had I accepted him before, it wouldn't have had the same effect that it had now. Because there's been moments where I've been to church and I've done the prayer and I've said, yes, I've accepted him. And I just completely go back to my old ways because I didn't truly in my heart, I didn't think I needed him. So if you're on the verge of accepting him, if you're even just thinking about it, if there's a part of you that's like, I don't want to live my life being depressed, being sad, feeling empty, feeling alone, you don't have to. Just call out to him. Call out to him with an honest heart. He's just waiting for you with his arms open. He's a gentleman. He's not gonna force anything on you. He's just knocking at the door waiting for you. and he'll invite you with open arms, I promise, and with all the love that you could ever imagine and more.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Almost False podcast. If you want to hear the beginning of this conversation, head over to Locals, where we post the unreleased footage from our interviews, where we also have the after show in which you can get to know our guests more personally and hear about what their life is like now. The link is in the description. Have a great day and stay blessed.